guys, and welcome to today's video. Now you may be saying, oh my goodness Melissa, you look totally different than usual. Or you could be saying, hey Melissa, do you not own an iron? For the second question, yes I do. It is at my boyfriend's place right now because he borrowed it to iron some dress shirts and I have not gotten it back. So this should be smoother in the future. But as for the first question, I am somewhere new. Got my new lighting set up, still maybe working out some of the bugs with it, but I am super excited about sitting where you can actually see the color of my skin a bit more. I'm hoping I'm not as washed out as usual. It is bright, but I'm hoping that that lets you see what I'm doing a bit more. And we'll keep playing with it until it's right, but it's nice to have a little space set up for filming. I promise this will get better. Let me just say that. What we're doing today on my channel is kind of different than usual. I do a lot of reviews. I've done a couple of sort of chatty get ready with me's. I've not talked a whole lot about myself for a couple of reasons. One is sort of comfort level. I've been doing these videos for almost a year now. And it's, you know, I sort of open up slowly because I wasn't really sure how much I wanted to share about myself and how much I didn't. Part of it was also that I didn't know how much would be interesting for anybody watching about me. But I thought that this might be a good chance to put on some makeup, not talk so much about the makeup. I looked up some of those questions, you know, YouTuber question tags or like things you didn't know about me tags, and I thought I would answer some of those as I put on some makeup, and maybe you'll find this interesting. If you like this kind of video that is a little bit more about maybe me and my personality, give me a thumbs up. Let me know because, hey, maybe you like this, maybe you don't. Maybe you just want me to stick to reviews. And maybe this video is going to be long, so I should get on with it. So I found a tag that's basically 50 questions you've never been asked before, and I thought that was a little bit maybe more interesting than sort of the usual questions that you see. So the first question here is, what is your favorite scented candle? I don't have a huge amount of scented candles. I mean, I know you often see in the background of people's videos candles burning. I've done that from time to time, not in my videos, but I mean, I do have some scented candles. Basically, I would say that my favorite is probably vanilla. I love just the pure smell of vanilla. And when I was sort of a teenager, the thing that people used to do for scent at that point was the Body Shop perfumes were a huge thing. And I was so into every Body Shop vanilla scented product, the body wash, the soap, the just plain perfume, all of that. If it was vanilla scented, I was into it. So even now, the smell of Body Shop vanilla products will take me back to my sort of teenage, early university years. So if I do go for a scented candle and I'm not into making big decisions, I will probably go for vanilla. One of the questions is, how old do you think you'll be when you get married? And I think this shows that this was made for people who are younger than me. I was married and I am no longer married. I got divorced, but I got married when I was 27 years old. I look back now and that seems so young, but I think that's a pretty sort of average age for people getting married. I mean, I was out of university for a couple of years, had like a real, you know, big girl job going, and yeah, I was together with my ex for 5 years total before we got married, and then 5 years of being married. The next question on here is, do you know a hoarder? I don't think I do, which is good. I remember being young and I had some friends where I was always amazed at how messy their home was, because my family, my parents were, I don't want to say neat freaks, but like they're a lot neater than I naturally am. And I always found it so strange when I went to this one family's home and it was like they couldn't use the dining room table. You could barely walk around in the kids' rooms. It was just not sort of my experience at that time because that's not what my home was like. But I wouldn't have said they were hoarders. I think that implies like the TV show. Ooh, that makes me pale. The TV show, like hoarder levels, and no, as far as I can think of, and I feel like I would be able to think of something like that, never met somebody who's a hoarder. Skipping over a few questions here to get to the ones that I think will be interesting. The next question that I'm going to answer is, how many oceans have you swam in? And this one actually makes me think because I've not swam in a huge number of oceans, I don't think. In Canada, I've never been any further east than Quebec, so I've never really been to the eastern provinces to swim in the Atlantic Ocean there. However, I have been to Florida and gone swimming there, or been in the ocean there on both the ocean side and the Gulf side. So I have been in the Atlantic Ocean. I don't believe, now that I think about it, I've ever been in the Pacific Ocean. I've never been on the west coast of the US. I have been in Victoria and Vancouver, but I don't think I ever even put my feet in the water there. So I've not swam there. I have had the opportunity though to swim in the Indian Ocean. So when I was university age, I had the opportunity with my family to go to a few different places around Asia. Singapore, Bali, Chiang Mai, and Hong Kong. And at the time I was friends with somebody in university who was a scuba diver. And when they heard that I was going to be in these places, they said like, oh my goodness, that has some of the best scuba diving in the world, or like great scuba diving. You should really go scuba diving. And when I was in Bali, I decided I really wanted to do this. And we were in Bali, I think, for 5 days total. And I insisted that I wanted to do this, and my sister said she would come along with me. So I am sure, and I know now, that there is a right way to train and get the background that you need to know to scuba dive, because it actually, whoa, that's orange. It actually can be quite dangerous, sort of like, you know, going down into the water, your body adjusting to it, what happens if something goes wrong, all those kinds of things. But we didn't do any of that. We kind of found this scuba diving organization through the hotel that we were staying in, and we decided to go. So basically we went out to this beach, had next to no direction in what it was we were doing, and we were each paired up with sort of a young Balinese man, and we were sort of given a few, they barely spoke English. We definitely, you know, we just didn't have the same language that we were speaking. They taught us some very, very basic hand gestures of what to do if we were like in trouble, had no air, need to go up, all these kinds of things, which were not a good form of communication. And then we jumped into a outrigger ocean canoe with each of us paired with one of these guys and this sort of older gentleman who was manning the outboard engine. And away we all went into the ocean. And I tend to get motion sick quite easily. So as we were going out into the ocean, I was feeling like sicker and sicker from this outboard canoe kind of bouncing along the waves. But I'm a very confident swimmer, and I just kept thinking, if I can just get into the water, I will feel better. I will feel so much better once we're in the water. So I get into the water thinking I'm going to feel good now, and I felt okay for a while, but I didn't really realize, I've not spent a lot of time in the ocean. I've mostly swum in pools and lakes and maybe some rivers, the amount of underwater currents that there are in the ocean, and how it doesn't feel like swimming in a regular pool because you're still being moved and pulled around in different directions. So yes, I saw some beautiful fish and you know, some lovely things, and the water was clear and beautiful. And then I realized, like, oh my God, I'm going to be sick. And not only am I going to be sick, and by sick I mean like throw up, but I am way far underwater and I've got a mask and an oxygen tank on, and oh my God, I can't be sick underwater in my mask with an oxygen tank on. So I started furiously telling my guide, I need to go up to the surface, I need to go up to the surface. And luckily we weren't that far down. I think that's probably why it maybe wasn't quite so dangerous, was we weren't low enough that I was going to get like the bends or anything from decompressing coming up quickly. And in my mind, all I was kind of thinking is, oh my God, my sister is going to make so much fun of me because I was the one who insisted we do this. I was the one who was all gung-ho, and I was maybe in the water for like 15 minutes at that point, and I thought she is going to tease me and I'm never going to hear the end of it. So I get up to the surface with him, and excuse me, this part is going to be indelicate. As soon as we get to the surface, I pull off the mask, take out the mouthpiece, and I was sick. And I'm being sick while I'm swimming in the ocean. It's not cool. And he sort of was holding onto the back of my collar and swimming me back to the boat again. And you know, nobody else was visibly around us. So it's not like any other poor person had to be near me while I was being sick. But I finally catch a glimpse at the boat, and my sister is on the boat already. And I thought, why is my sister there? Well, we get back to the boat, and she is even sicker than I am. And my poor sister has been being sick over the side of this outrigger canoe for probably a good 5 to 10 minutes at that point. I think she barely got any time at all scuba diving. And she was just waiting for me to get back so that we could get back to shore again. And there is no feeling so good as when you have been motion sick and you finally get your feet back on moving land. And that was the day my sister and I decided that we are not scuba divers. It's not what we're going to do. I had that experience in my life, so like I'm good from now on. Maybe snorkeling where you don't, you know, get as deep, there isn't that danger level. And when I told people who actually knew the kind of preparation and skill and safety procedures that should go into scuba diving, what my sister and I had done, it was not great. This is why people who don't know anything about scuba diving shouldn't just sort of pick whoever to do this with. There are some really important things that you should learn before you scuba dive. So that's the story that comes from, yes, I have swam in the Indian Ocean and the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico, and I think that's it. So the next questions that are here is, what would you name a daughter and what would you name a son? I am not going to have kids. I do not have children, and it's never sort of been my plan in life to have kids. So although I'm sure some people sort of think like, oh, she got divorced, she's not gonna, you know, she's at an age now where she's not going to have kids. It was never my plan to have kids, so I'm actually okay with that. So I was never somebody who came up with names that I was going to name children when I had them. I have had pets. I had a basset hounded dog for 8 years, and she was my little girl. That was my Maggie. Maggie came with her name. I would not necessarily have named her that. I probably would have named her Winifred, because somehow I think the name Winifred for a female basset hound is just the best name ever. And then you can call them Winnie or Freddie, and I just love that. I have a great aunt Winifred who I maybe met once in my life, but I just think it's one of those names that goes really well for a basset hound type dog. I don't really know what eye look I am going for. I'm just kind of playing around here and seeing what I come up with. One of the questions here is, are your grandparents still married? So both my sets of grandparents stayed married as long as they were all alive. I have, on one side of my family, my one grandfather passed away when I was about 3, so I don't really remember him too well. His wife, my other grandma, passed away when I was about in grade 9, so I remember her quite well. And then my other set of grandparents, my grandmother is still alive. She is in her mid-90s right now, and she and my grandfather were married for, I guess, like 60 some odd years, and he also lived to his 90s and passed away just a couple of years ago. Now, my grandmother that is still alive, she was a war bride. She was born in Ireland and met my grandfather, who was from Canada but went to serve in World War II, and he had family from Ireland, so he went back there on his time off, his breaks, and met my grandmother. So they had not met each other or spent a lot of time together before they got married in Ireland during the war. And my grandmother got on a ship and came to Canada on her own to meet up with her husband when he got back from the war. And as crazy as that is to think about, they stayed happily married for their entire lives. Got an interesting green look going on. One of the questions on this list is, do you know who Kermit the Frog is? Are there people who don't know who Kermit the Frog is? Of course I do. Love the Muppets, love anything to do with Jim Henson. When I was a kid, it was when The Muppet Show was still on, which I loved. Didn't appreciate all of it until I got older and realized about how many cool musical acts and actors and actresses they had on there. And when I was a kid, for some reason, for a while, I really wanted to be a Jim Henson puppeteer. I had so many toys that were puppets. I used to practice with them all the time. I loved the Muppets, and I wanted to do that. Don't really think that's a career path that many people can follow, and it wasn't the one that I did, but I loved them as a kid. You know, Fraggle Rock, which was actually filmed, a lot of it. This is gonna totally go off track, only for those of you who remember Fraggle Rock. There was Uncle Traveling Matt, who was one of the Fraggles in it, and he used to send postcards about his adventures, and he was always in Toronto, which is the city where I grew up. So I would always kind of recognize things that were in the background of where Uncle Traveling Matt was going. Huge fan of Muppets and Fraggles and the whole thing, and I'll still watch bits of it now and watch old ones on YouTube and be thoroughly amused by it. One of the questions is, what language besides your native language would you like to be fluent in? And this is a pretty easy one because I am not fluent in French, but I would really like to be. For those of you who watch me who are also Canadian, you know that we learned French in school. And in fact, my mom was a primary school French teacher. Sorry, it's hard to talk and do eyeliner at the same time. So I had every advantage in the world where I should have been really, really good at speaking French, but there's something about my brain. My brain tends to click for maths and sciences, but languages I just find quite difficult. So growing up in Toronto, it wasn't a big deal to learn French. Like that's what we learned in school as our second language, but you never got to practice it or hear it anywhere. So I took it up until grade 9 or grade 10, I think grade 10, and ended up dropping it because I didn't enjoy languages. I didn't feel like I was good at it, and there were other things that I excelled at more. Now, having now moved to Ottawa, you hear French spoken a lot here. This is very much a bilingual city, and the jobs here also really do require French in most cases. So the biggest employer here is the Canadian government, the federal government, and it is very difficult to find positions that don't have at least some level of being bilingual as part of the requirement. So it's very, very easy for me to choose what language I would like to be bilingual in, and that would definitely be French. It would just open up so many opportunities, but also just give me a better understanding of, you know, my country, be able to talk to people who are around me every day, be able to just feel like I understand that much more. And most French people that you meet, Quebecois people that you meet, or people who are Francophone, they do speak enough English to get by. And it always just feels like I don't love the fact that if I want to talk with folks that they need to make the effort to speak my language. I would like to be at least able to have conversational French to be able to communicate with people who are bilingual as well. One of the questions on here is, have you ever had Indian food? And oh my God, yes. And wow, I just looked up and I'm not doing well with mascara getting all over the place today. Yes, I have. It is my favorite kind of cuisine. I first had it back in university when I was maybe about 20 years old. I was fully vegetarian for about 10 years through all of high school, all of university, and for about 3 years after that, I would say. So I had a friend when I was in university know that I was vegetarian, and couldn't believe that I'd never had Indian food before, because Indian food is just so much variety when you're vegetarian. So yes, I love Indian food. I do find it's harder to find good Indian food in Ottawa than it is in Toronto. So I've tried out a bunch of places and I do have some favorites now. I have a couple of recipes that I can cook that are Indian food that are pretty good, but none as good as restaurant quality, at least for me. I'm just not that level of ability at cooking Indian food yet, but I love all kinds of, especially vegetarian Indian food, even though I am no longer vegetarian. So I did not get anywhere close to answering 50 questions, which is how many there are here, but I did get the makeup look finished up, and I don't want this to go on for too long, so I didn't get anywhere close to answering the 50 questions that were there, but I did get my makeup finished, and editing this will give me a good idea of what's working and what's not for the lighting, and I have more questions to answer for another one of these. So I have some questions for you to leave answers to down in the comments. What do you think of the new... Why am I doing this? Question 1, what do you think of the new setup? What's working? What isn't? Any comments on the lighting? I know sometimes when I was holding things up, my face would get really sort of blown out and bright. Gonna see what I can do about that. Second question, did you like this kind of video? Do you want to see more of this where it's a little bit of like storytelling, things about me, a little bit more about my life? Let me know, because I'm happy to do more of them. These are kind of fun to sit down and chat and not have to do a lot of research ahead of time, just get a chance to sort of sit down and chat, you and me. Let me zoom in, show you the final makeup look. I'm not really sure what this is. Sort of green, brown, and a little bit of orange, but that's okay. pretty happy with how it turned out. So that is it for me for now. I look forward to my next few videos now that I've got this set up. I'm gonna have to do something about this, I get that, but I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me. I'm going to put my face up here to click on to subscribe, and I'm gonna put an old video up here to click on to watch an old video, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!